Hey, this is Brett Bumeter, and this is the Zeta Mining Show. This is episode 36, and today we are going to be talking a little bit about the unintended consequences of fame or celebrity. Recently, the founder of Minecraft announced he was resigning from his own company, and if possible, was trying to resign from the fame he accidentally inherited with his products. He basically is trying to kind of run away from some of the fame that developed as his product became this global dominating game that was purchased by Microsoft for $2.5 billion. In other related news of problems with fame, the NFL is struggling with the fame and infamy of some of their players getting into trouble with the law, and by extension in trouble with the public opinion about their players and the NFL itself, and then their sponsors. And we're going to touch a little bit on a curious case about Kanye West. He's a famous musician, but he's also famous for sticking his foot in his mouth. And in Australia last week, he was accused of trying to force a wheelchair member to stand up, according to many news accounts. And he was promptly skewered, although when the facts came out and the video showed up, it didn't really seem like that happened at all. Yet his infamy for foot and mouth disease kind of ruled him guilty. So I'm joined here with my co-host, Warren Whitlock. How are you doing, Warren?
I'm here. I'm here. And of course, I have so much experience with being famous.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, right. I can draw a crowd of 3, 4 people at a time, and I like that. I like the approach you took in describing it there of what these unintended consequences are, and in fact, the current story is about Minecraft, but it immediately got me thinking of who's the king of that. Craig from Craigslist. Guy very hard to interview, very hard to get a hold of. I have read accounts of, serious accounts, like in a book, of people that are trying to explain the phenomena of what Craigslist did and decided they needed to talk to him. There's a couple of questions. If you ask him with an arranged interview that you took months to get to, he'll get up and leave the room because he just is bored with talking about the topic. And he gets away with that because he's Craig from Craigslist. He's stuck with the publicity because he's doing something he really loves and wants to continue doing it, and his name is on it.
Yeah.
And the tale is the guy works every day at the office working on this and doing the kind of things that a programmer or a person running Craigslist would worry about, but not anything about whether the company is making any money or how well it's doing. And of course, it's more money than he ever intended to make with it. I think it's the same with the Minecraft guy, although he managed to step in it with some controversy because he also likes to tweet.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
One tweet, and everybody wants to jump down his throat.
And that's kind of the gentleman from Minecraft. His name is Marcus Persson, and I believe he goes by Notch as kind of his handle on Twitter and various other places in the gaming world. He basically says, I created this game, and I realized that I wasn't the CEO type, and so I turned it over to someone that was, and that person ran the studio Mojang that recently sold Minecraft to Microsoft. But he says, I'm a coder. I like to make games, and he says, I'm a nerdy computer programmer who likes to have opinions on Twitter. Is one of the quotes from his resignation letter. He does like to, he says, I'd like to be out there on one side or the other or whatever it is that he's talking about, but he doesn't want the repercussions that come with his name associated with this multi-billion-dollar company that has a game that is, creatively changing the world in some ways. So, he's trying to step back. It kind of reminds me of Woz from Apple a little bit. He always had Steve Jobs to deflect the fame over to, such that he could continue to be his nerdy self as much as he wanted to be without too many repercussions. Now, I wouldn't say that Steve Wozniak deflected it all the way, but that I am reminded of his personality in this Marcus Persson, Notch guy. And it's striking that he's trying to run away from the fame in a week when other actual what I'd call celebrities, not necessarily internet famous, well, internet famous also, but NFL football players, musicians are running in smack dab into the unintended consequences of their own fame in the courts of public opinion. And I don't necessarily, our goal in the show is not to really get into the nuts and bolts of the scandals facing the NFL or Kanye West, really, for that matter, either. It's just about how public opinion is people are being tried in the courts of public opinion, and that may be right or wrong, but it's having a serious impact on how people deal with things. There's much bigger repercussions for someone's career, their wallet, their company, their corporation, their team, their brand, whatever you want to say it about it, when they make little faux pas or big faux pas or criminal acts that the public hears about. And it's, in some ways, it seems to be pushing our society in a direction where people have to, I don't know, do people have to be better than they were 20 years ago because everything is, under the gun? There was that CEO a couple weeks ago that had to resign from some company I'd never heard of because he was dog sitting somebody's dog and got mad and kicked the dog while he was in an elevator and got picked up on a camera. And he's this CEO, I think, and now he was forced out.
I like to say that that the person I am online is a little bit better version of me, and I try to keep those versions as close as possible. But when I step out my front door, I'm gonna usually have my pants on, and
if it's light out.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And I'm gonna try to put my best foot forward in some ways, but today it's okay. I know we're both wearing black T-shirts today to in a day when we're talking about celebrity, we're not worrying too much about how we look. And
didn't shave today.
Your punch or whatever you're drinking there reminds me of some kind of adult beverage, but
Diet cranberry juice.
I'm guessing at 1 in the afternoon you're not having an adult beverage.
No tipple of anything here. It's just diet cranberry juice.
But and we just don't care, and that's one of the attitudes you can take. Again, the reluctant billionaire who invented something who wants to hide. Boy, I saw a great documentary about what's his name, the Catcher in the Rye guy. Who is he?
Yeah, no, I just dropped his name too. I had it and I lost it.
Oh, okay, good. Salinger.
Yeah,
Salinger wrote Catcher in the Rye, and everybody wanted him to write more. Well, it makes sense. People liked his books. They wanted him to write more. They hoped he was a recluse off working on another great novel. For the most part, he wasn't as prolific as he could have been. I don't know. Do we like Stephen King more because he puts out, a novel? While I said that sentence, another Stephen King book came out.
Right.
And again, however he wants to choose to live his life, he gets away with it because he's always got his book in the news. And so there's a bunch of different ways traditionally that we've handled this, but today the world has changed. I remember, hearing that when the 1960 presidential election came along, TV mattered. Nixon had a 5 o'clock shadow and he couldn't win. And which you think about it, that's a really dumb way to do it. But fast forward to all the presidents since and the things we've learned, and presidency seemed like something that no one man could handle. And then the cowboy Reagan came in and made it look like it was easy because him and his team made him look good. That's why they called him the Teflon president. So, comparing that to what's going on today, the difference is that, we have cars today. try as I may, I can't figure out any reason why the world needs Kardashians to be famous. But
I don't know. That baffles me.
it doesn't make any sense. But they are, and therefore that's something that I would pay attention to. The reason I see, the reason I pay any attention at all is like, wow, that's something I'm supposed to know about. Or one-word celebrity names, that they like to talk about. We have so much capacity to process information and put it up, available. I was writing a quote for an ebook that's coming out, and they wanted me to, say something pithy, and so I took the time to edit my words and put 100 words down to 40. Boy, you sound a lot better when you actually edit yourself. And I was thinking about the concept. I say listen and love a lot. That always takes some kind of context, because you say listen and love and you sound like some kind of hippie. If you say that at a business conference, it's different. I was talking about that yesterday at a conference I was emceeing, and somebody got up and did a half-hour presentation on loving their customers. They were talking about customer loyalty program. Nobody winced or said anything about it. I say that in other places, and people just, think, what are you, crazy? And I have actually said it to some people, hey, my mantra is listen and love, but I'll bet that would never go over for your audience. And the other guy says, oh, no, he's got to have a 27-step program for marketing strategy. He couldn't get along, and the word love can't appear in it at all, because there's channels and departments and enterprise and words I don't use. But really, when it comes back down to it, that's my message. That's what I say. So going back to this quote, as I looked at it, I said, people are yearning to connect and find out about something. We get more and more data. We want more and more data. That's good, but we need it to be relevant. We need it to be, and hopefully that's what we're doing here for those who follow the show, giving them our take on it and put it into relevance, rather than blah, 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 NFL, blah, 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 Kardashian.
Relevance also plays into some of the problems that each of the people that we mentioned is facing. In the Kanye West example, he was at his concert, he's putting on the concert, he's up on stage, and as happens in almost every concert I've ever been to, the artist says, okay, I want everybody to get up and clap your hands or whatever, and he's pauses the show just a little bit till everybody gets up and gets involved, and I always hate that in the audience, because I'm that person that doesn't like to do what the cheerleaders say to do. It's just, I don't know why. I'm just cutting a mold where I don't really, I'd love to clap to the music probably if they didn't tell me to. But as soon as I'm told to, I'm like, no, I'm not putting my hands up. But so anyway, he says, everybody put your hands up and start, get up, because he wants to get the crowd into the show a little bit and build up the energy. And it spun into this story about how there was a person in the audience who took his prosthetic leg up and held his prosthetic leg up and waved it over his head, and another person sitting in a wheelchair couldn't get up, and he wouldn't keep the show going, according to the news that hit. But later, video came out, live video from the event, and he told everybody, get up, the show's not going on until we begin. Oh, you're in a wheelchair. He automatically saw it wasn't a slow thing. It wasn't a 2-minute awkward pause. It was, within the same sentence. You're in a wheelchair. You don't have to get up. He, pointed it out, recognizing that he saw the person not getting up, but moved on. And they made the news made this big public skewering of Kanye West because he's famous for sticking his foot in his mouth. And they say, oh, here's another example. He's trying to make a person in a wheelchair stand up at a concert, and they can't do that. It's in some ways the relevance is that you can say the perfect thing in all circumstances for all audiences, and anything that anyone says can be twisted. And sometimes this public opinion's getting
yeah,
twisted.
And you got to think about it. Even if the story were true, that he was trying to convince a person in a wheelchair to stand up, or making fun of them, or whatever, you go, well, that's Kanye West. That's what he does. Right. And I'm not a fan, but he is who he is, and letting, and he probably is helping with this situation in that if they have to make up stuff about Conway West, they're not doing a good job reporting. Maybe we'll reach a point where, we pick out only the really dumb things that he does, not the not the ones that are just look dumb out of context. And so, yeah, and we're thinking now of promoting this show with as many crazy things out of context that we could. Actually, that would be an interesting episode if we just said, well, funny you got here because we tricked you, and we did it to show you that we don't want to trick you. And that's been done too. But probably there's a room for a little bit more of that, of poking fun at that sort of thing. I've noticed there's, I'm a big fan of getting my news from the comedy shows, and I've really started to notice, maybe it's age or difference of opinion on certain things, but they're reaching a point where I go, like, my friends say they won't watch Jon Stewart because his politics are too far off of what they feel. I usually take that as an advantage to see another side. I want the jester to poke fun, but he pokes fun at one side instead of both sides, and I'm kind of let down by that, if anything. And then when I see, clip after clip after clip of people being dumb in what they're doing, say reporters, it reinforces something I've known for years. I don't want to get my news from a reporter. Here, if we're talking about news here, it's commentary. We're talking about something else. That's okay. It's a commentary type of program. Same with a blogger. Say whatever you want. But when you get on the news and try to present something as this is the news, and then you just say dumb things, and most of them is the dumb. And I'm not talking about political, left, right, upside down. I'm talking about just plain dumb because you're trying to fill time. And I hope that's not us. If anything, I'm trying to think of how can I get this cut off as short as possible, say succinctly what I mean, and move on to things that are more important in my life. But
you mentioned the Daily Show, and there was what I consider to be kind of a classic example now. Back during the financial crisis, Jon Stewart famously had Jim Cramer from CNBC on his show, and this was after the financial crisis had hit, and Jim Cramer had made some picks and calls about different things that some accused him of helping to exacerbate the financial crisis. So Jon Stewart, the jester, brings Jim Cramer onto his show and publicly skewers him. Now, if you watch the live version of that show, and the Daily Show is edited, so it's cut down to fit into the whatever amount of time they have for that particular thing. But if you watched the live show, you would have seen the short 14, 15-minute segment that was edited down, and it would appear that Jon Stewart set up questions, softball pitches, and Jim Cramer totally couldn't respond at all, and basically seemed to admit that Jim Cramer admitted that he was completely wrong about everything and was a worthless human being and should just go crawl under a rock and die.
Right.
If you happen
don't exaggerate there, Brett.
Right. Yeah. No. Well, I'm not exaggerating much whatsoever. Yeah. But if you happen to watch the full show, the unedited, and they show these online. They don't try to hide them, but they don't necessarily get the same amount of attention that the DVR version gets. For most people, if you're watching it through cable or something like that, or Hulu or whatever. So, but if you saw the full version, Jim Cramer pretty much explained it and held his own, and it wasn't a public skewering at all. The jester didn't really win or even have too many great jokes because Jim Cramer answered everything in context, and he said, well, yeah, I got some things wrong, but it was a complicated situation, and here were the exceptions to the rules and stuff like that. It was one of those situations where, the next day nobody had yet seen the edited versions, and everybody thought Jim Cramer's career was dead. I find him to be an interesting guy, an interesting TV personality. I've never followed his stock picks. Not that they're good or bad or otherwise. It's just I wouldn't. Again, I don't put my hands up in the air and go invest in something when somebody says, "Hey, go invest in this" or "Go sell this" or whatever. That seems like the absolute wrong time to do it to me. But it was another example, kind of like Kanye, where he was skewered in public, not just by, Jon Stewart started it, and then all the news organizations piled on afterwards to say, look what happened to Jim Cramer on Jon Stewart last night. It's one of those cases where I do find Jon Stewart Daily Show extremely entertaining, but there's when you get your news from the jester, that it's going to be flipped around and twisted a little bit because he's getting laughs.
And that's why, I watched The Daily Show last night. I haven't given up on it. I understand why some people do, and and especially I think that the Colbert Report goes farther at letting you in on the joke that he's not stating his opinion. And sometimes with Jon Stewart, I'm thinking he's getting very emotional very passionate about a topic, and doesn't necessarily have the same thinking on it as me. And then there's the new show from the offshoot of those guys, John Oliver, who is now really tackling one topic, and I think the writing and the comedy of it is just excellent. And then I'm finding like half the time I was going like, but I don't like what he's saying. He's like attacking something that he's wrong to attack it. And wrong is again, it's my feeling. It's not valid for giving him show advice. So that really gets down to the heart of it. In a day when you have to try to use hyperbole to get your message across and say something and yell louder, if you're going to play that game, it's a game I'm trying my best not to play, but I have to do it too. I have to write a headline, write a tweet to tell people to watch this show. What am I going to say about it? Am I going to say that two reasoned, intelligent people got together and talked about this issue, and no one's going to click? And so it's a matter of finding the right way to put it without without crossing a line. And one of those things is, would you feel good about telling your mother about what's going on? Is it just good old-fashioned manners and knowing yourself where to draw the line?
It's tricky. There's always going to be those parameters that are set. You'll probably always write these things within the parameters of what's allowed and what's not allowed, and you'll be somewhere much safer in between. But the challenge is that as other people around the world, as they look at it from different perspectives, that their parameters come in at it from a different angle, and suddenly you're outside of the bounds. And I think the NFL situation kind of highlights that, because there's several different things going on in the NFL, and I don't want to get into all the problems, but the NFL has a few different challenges. One is they have players behaving very badly to the extent that they're getting in trouble with the law and doing some things that I think are reprehensible. I'm not a fan of the NFL. I could kind of care less about the NFL except for what that tells us about where we are today. And the challenge they face is they have to make sure that they punish, because the court of public opinion demands it, their fans, the people that are going to pay to go to their games, and boycott if they don't. They have to punish players for perceived wrongs, especially potentially criminal wrongs, but they also have contractual obligations with their union, and which may or may not allow them to arbitrarily just go punish somebody for whatever thing they think the public is going to be upset over. And then they also have to keep their advertisers happy. So they've got all these stakeholders coming in at it from different angles, and there's not an easy path to navigate. Don't get me wrong, from my perspective, I think it would be fine if they just start firing people left and right. But at the end of the day, they start to run out of players, I think. So.
Well, they might. Well, and again, it's very easy for somebody to take what you said out of context. And so if my cause is, helping battered women, then as soon as I hear anything about this, I want to jump on it. And I was attacked at one point, and I believe it was this controversy. It might have been something else. But somebody wanted me to then retweet that their battered women's program was the best thing on earth. And, and I didn't really care about the problem if I didn't retweet it. Well, I took a look at what they were doing, which is, more than I thought they deserved, because just, demanding in public that I support an issue just because you like it is is really not what I'm about or what any kind of public discourse should be about. So, but I take the time and I look at it and I go like, they're not bad people. I just don't agree with them. And the other one is, was a celebrity death, which let me segue over to what I really found interesting about that, because this is one where I went overboard. Somebody posted that a woman at a large PR firm, one of the very big ones, put out a memo on how to take advantage of the current news being a celebrity death. And we'll just leave it at that as to what the particular issue was. But it was inappropriate. It was wrong. It was a part of the company that focused on crisis management and what to do to make yourself look good when you do something like this. And then the response of the company and the person in it was like, we really didn't mean that. It's okay. Kind of something you might do in the 70s or 80s with the story rather than current, or at least that was my opinion. And I laughed and said, well, that's something, that how can you be known for somebody that helps people with a crisis if when you get your own crisis you handle it like this? Boy, that's a career ender. Career ender was going over the line. I meant it somewhat jokingly, how do you recover from this? I got attacked on why didn't you, in the comment thread, why didn't, I think you're overstating. Why does everybody quickly go to that? Well, my point was people do quickly go to that, and the people hired to fix it or prevent it should have known better in the first place. And so they were doing something that was detrimental to the career. It wasn't something like what I did on a Saturday night affects what I do on the job. It was official company communication putting out a position that was exactly opposite of what they're paid to do. And even in that situation, I look back at it and go like, well, I didn't need to attack them. I could have explained what I explained here, maybe edited, and made my point and moved on. I think we all try to do that. That's why we use the word literally too much. That's why we keep saying, that this is the biggest. It really is jumping out of the kettle and out of the frying pan and into the fire. Well, right. That's not literally what happened. You're caught with public drunkenness. That's really no fire or frying pan involved there. It can't be literal.
It's one of the challenges of Twitter and Facebook in particular is that we feel like we're on a social network, but it's a social network where that 140 character message, if it's very wrong for the situation, can all of a sudden be put up on the screen on CNN, and the whole world can see your message in the context that CNN wants to present it. So, Gilbert Gottfried he's a comedian. He's making jokes about the tsunami in Japan as it's happening, pretty much, and loses his job as the announcer for being the Aflac duck. But this type of thing happens all the time. There was that, I can't remember the exact story, but there was a girl. She was hopped on a plane headed to Africa, I think, made some derogatory joke, a race joke, I believe it was, or something like that as she did it. And by the time she got off the plane, she was fired. She was working for, I don't know, some agency or something like that.
Right.
There are those comments that you can jokingly make, or maybe in the heat of doing your job and putting out some talking points for your team, shop talk. The shop talk isn't politically correct enough for to see the light of day and be analyzed by CNN, and it can be, in a worst case scenario, a career ender. But it's not always It's becoming increasingly more common that it's not the worst case scenario, it's the scenario. And so how do you then make sure how do you have a real conversation if you have to guard your words like that every time you tweet?
Well, they call it like, what do they call that? Morgue humor? Humor,
right.
that if your job is, if you work in a funeral home, your day-to-day job is such that, you want to keep it as light as possible, so you can, not go crazy from it, and saying the wrong thing sometimes. And there's, of course, there's impropriety versus just letting off some steam, and that context is all gone when we start clipping out things. So I guess my prescription from this show would be, when you read something, assume that somebody is. There you go. Now I've made you listen to the whole show, and at the end I'm telling you all those headlines I used to get you to watch the show. If you haven't figured it out by now, they're damn lies. We're making up stuff. We're saying whatever it is. On the other hand, if you're the person saying that, good manners make sense. Screen yourself a little bit, edit yourself a little bit, and you'll do better. Put your best foot forward. And the truth is, I may not be quite that nice in private, but hey, that's private.
One of the things that I think challenges people too, and when I was in college, I took an English class. It was a rhetoric class, and when you study rhetoric, you learn to analyze a topic from 360 degrees. So you don't go in it trying to convince people or persuade people or anything like that. You're trying to understand, and to do that, you have to put yourself in the position of understanding all of those different perspectives all the way around the topic. And as you do that, you have to either verbalize it, write it, depending on, in this case, it was an English class, so we would have to write papers and we would have to talk all the way around the topic. A lot of times in shows, especially when you've got like a panel of people or something like The View, you have people that are trying to express the different views and cover the viewpoint of the greater audience all the way around. Right. And as they do that, sometimes they say things as they put themselves in the position of someone else or someone else's perspective. They say things that get them into a lot of trouble. It may not be their view whatsoever. They're just covering that perspective and playing a little bit of pong with everybody else as they bounce the topic back and forth from different views. And I think a lot of times when we get into these talk shows or any of the talking head scenarios that you see on the news, when there's more than 2 or 3 people in the talking head situations, they'll say things that they normally wouldn't say because it's not really their perspective. They just see a gap in the argument or a gap that doesn't quite hit all of the stakeholders, and that tends to get people into trouble because then it's taken completely out of context. The video is clipped. You just see that one little excerpt. You don't get the full context. And maybe, a lot of people, I had a rhetoric class in college. Most of the people I went to college with didn't take that rhetoric class. I'm not sure that many people have that training or experience of looking at things quite like that. I have run into other people that have had it. I know you have that perspective and use it quite a bit yourself, Warren, but not everybody has it, so I don't think they always recognize what's going on when they walk into a conversation that's doing that.
Well, and my training in college was they kept talking about and I wasn't journalism, but we kept talking because we were in that department, and we kept talking about how the journalists tried to be objective. And
right.
And of course the journalist wouldn't say that, especially a journalism student. I am objective. I always look at all viewpoints. I took a rhetoric class. No, they're not. They bring their own biases. I have my biases. You have your biases. That's human to be biased. And when we try to hold people to that standard, we get into fights. And somebody wisely told me, I don't remember if I've said it on this show or not, but a few months ago they said one of your problems, Warren, is that people love to fight the left against the right against the left, and you come in and you're objective. That's the one thing they can get together on, and they all hate you.
Yeah.
You want to state a fact rather than And again,
why aren't you taking sides?
Yeah. As soon as we mentioned the NFL, just the 3 letters, somebody's thinking that we've got to be on one side or the other of battered women. Gosh, it's really hard to be on the pro-battered women side. Pro-battering women. It's a dumb thing. I think even the guy who is beating his wife doesn't think that it's right that other guys should beat their wives.
I doubt he's out there.
To have a knee-jerk reaction to it when it comes out, it's okay, So, yeah, fortunately, we're not famous enough that I have to worry about tomorrow's headline saying, Warren is against battered women. taking something out of context. And there's other things. As soon as I hear NFL, I'm thinking violent sport. And I have my biases about it. I'm thinking waste of time on a Sunday afternoon. So,
Yeah,
and other people don't feel that way. So, try to dismiss that when you're looking at something, and be somewhat objective. That's great advice that I know people aren't going to do.
It's a strange
something that you hold yourself to a little bit higher standard, and you try not to do that. I really don't think that Lindsey Graham this week came out and said his words were, if we don't go over there and take care of these terrorists, they're going to come over here and kill all of us. 350 million people are going to die? Of course not. I find that funny that he made that faux pas. Other collected work of Lindsey Graham, I think he does a lot of faux pas like that, and I question his sanity, but that's okay. That's still not like I've got to go out and take this guy out of office for saying that. I know that when he said, come over here and kill all of us, he was trying to use hyperbole to express himself, that his passionate idea was, this is something we have to take care of. The logic of whether or not the guys fighting in Iraq are going to be on our doorstep anytime soon, in any conceivable way, is really not what we're arguing about when we start saying you were wrong to say it was all people. Well, if you want to have a reasoned fight with them, say, like, really, is there a threat that they're going to come over here? How's that going to happen? Show me some statistics. Maybe as a member of Congress you have some information I don't. Show me that that's a threat. And, again, I think my bias is pretty strong here. I know that, I just absolutely know that that's not the real threat. But again, to attack him because he said the words, all of us will be dead, you're just attacking you're attacking his language rather than the issue.
Yeah, I would agree, and that's I think the key. Whatever perspective somebody comes in on, it's easy to target the words, but the words aren't necessarily the person. Might not even be the person's true belief or perspective, or the thing that they are even espousing. They may just be covering that one angle of something, which is probably the case in Lindsey Graham's situation. I don't necessarily agree or disagree with his politics when it comes to the military, but he's pushing the pendulum back one way or the other.
Right. The time to say this guy is good or bad at his job and get rid of him is not when he makes a faux pas on a news show.
Yeah.
Yeah. You need to look a little bit broader than what he said last Sunday morning. So great. Well, I think if everybody took my advice and thought just like I did, then we'd all agree, and the place would be the world would be boring, and it would kill everybody on your block. So don't agree with me. That's okay. But let's try our best to be objective and then polite and have some manners. And that's it. That's my advice for today.
That sounds like a good place to leave it. So this has been the Zeta Mining Show, episode 36. We're coming up on 40 soon. We'd invite you to check us out on YouTube. Please consider subscribing to us on YouTube, or check us out at ZetaMining.com. You can find us on iTunes and catch the episodes via audio there. Thank you, and we hope to see you next week.